Hi, I wanted to do a little demonstration of using arrays or tuples in Python. I think it's a good time to introduce this. I'm sure they're going to talk about this in the class, but I couldn't resist using it on this program because they're very powerful arrays, and some of you who've done this before have used arrays in other languages like JavaScript or Java or C or any other language. They all have arrays. In Python they call them tuples, and the way you create a tuple is you just assign it to a variable, and it's a list of quoted strings or numbers or whatever you want to assign. In our case, we're going to use, I called it plays, and I put in strings that are the values for our hands for the plays that were for our game. Now this tuple that is just created an object. So Python said, okay, we're assigning something to the word plays. Let's see what it is. Okay, if we stopped right there, it would have been a string, the word rock, but there's a comma after it. So that tells Python, hey, we're creating an object here, and it goes ahead and puts all these things in here. Now, when it's creating an object, you get some methods that come along with it. So we'll look at some of those too. There's three things I want to talk about: the length function, and the index method, and then calling arrays by index. So those are the three things I want to focus on in this tutorial. Let's call the length function, and we're going to assign the length of this plays object or tuple to a variable. I'm going to call it size. So size, length in plays. So the length function returns the length of whatever you pass it. In this case it's plays, and the plays has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. So if we print size, let's do this. Let's actually print a string. Length of plays tuple, and then we'll have a string. So we convert it to a string because it's returning an integer. The length function returns an integer, and it's the length of plays. So we're going to convert the number 5 to string, and let's say length of plays tuple, and it says 5. So that length function is really handy. You could also do it for one of the strings in here, and it'll tell us how long this is. 0, 1, 2, we could say scissors is 0, 1, 2. So let's say scissors has, and then convert to a string, the length of plays index 2, which is 0, 1, 2, the word scissors. And then we'll just make a sentence out of that, and we'll run that, and scissors has 8 characters, which, lo and behold, certainly does. So that's that shows that we can get the length of a tuple or the length of a string. We can get the length of darn near anything that has a length. So one of the things we can do now that we have this tuple defined, and we can see that we can get the value at that index, is we can see how that works in our program. So we can define a function called number to, and then pass the number. And now this is where it really gets cool, because we're going to have a one-line function, and it's return the plays. And then in square brackets, whenever you have an array like this, when you're providing the index value, you put it in square brackets, and we're going to return the whatever item is in plays that's at that index number that we pass to this function. So let's go down here and print that. We'll do the one at 2. Let's see what happens. And 0, 1, 2, so it's scissors. And if I change that to 4, should print the last one and run that, and it's Spock. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So even though there's 5 items, it starts with 0, so you got 0 through 4. And those are the ordinal values of the tuple. So you can see how simple that made this function. Now there's another method that comes with objects, and it's called the index method. And you call that in kind of a special way. It's not a function like this where you call a function with an argument. It does have an argument, but you call it on the object that it's part of, that it's in the class of that object. So we could say define name to number. So we want the number value, and here we're going to provide a name, but we want the number value in the array of that guy. So again, we just do it with one line of code. Return, and we're going to say plays, but instead of giving it that value, we're going to look the method. We use a dot and we say index. So that's how you call this. Is the object, and the object has a whole bunch of attributes and methods, and one of those methods is index. Index of what? Well, that takes an argument, and we're going to pass it the name, the thing that we're looking for in this list. So you pass one of these guys, and it will give the ordinal value, it will give the index of that. Okay, so now let's go down here and print name to number and lizard. Let's change that to something else. Let's say paper. We've used scissors and lizard too much. And we run that guy, and it gives us 1, which is true, because this is rock would be 0, paper is 1, scissors is 2, lizard 3, Spock is 4. So that is, you can see how simple that makes our functions. In fact, it's so simple you probably wouldn't even make a function that did this. You would just call plays number and put that wherever you'd call the function. So if I'd said print plays 3, it should be lizard, it should print lizard, and let's run that guy, and it says lizard. So that's a lot easier to call that. And again, and this just demonstrates the power of using this object up here, this tuple, and you can see the fact that we can get the length of it. It changes dynamically, so if we were to change the order of this, we wouldn't go down in some function and go look for all the places where we said if Spock then 4, if lizard then 3, and so on. You wouldn't do all that. You would just return the index and then do the vice versa and provide the name and provide the index, and it would return the paper, the string. But you can also change add something to it. And now watch this, it says 5, and we run it again, and now it says 6 because we changed the length of it. So we didn't have to go through and change stuff in our function, we just changed it right here. If I change the order of these, also if I go put Spock somewhere else, then he'll pop up in these functions, his index will change. So if I put Spock here, now he's 1, so if I say, see, that changed a few things. It changed lizard, it changed the index number of whatever it was down there, and this became scissors because we changed the, so now if we say print Spock and run that, name to number, it changed it to 1 over here because Spock is now in the ordinal 1 position, 0, 1. So this was just a demonstration to show these 3 things: the length function, using creating an object, which in this case is a tuple, which is a list of our strings for our game, using the length function to find the length of either a string or of an object like this, and calling the array with an index to return the value at that index location, and then finally calling the index method on the object, on its object, and providing a value in there, and returns the integer value. So hopefully this was helpful, and it might give you different ideas about different ways to write this program now. Thank you.